Hey guys, I'm Chad Hoover, iCast 2024. We're back in the Bonafide booth. This thing has absolutely lit the internet on fire, and by this thing, I mean the XTR130, designed by this thing right here, which is Hans Newts from Bonafide. Bonafide's like, what's your actual title?
Head of design.
Head of design. All right, so listen, Hans.
Yeah.
I want to do a little bit of a different walkthrough with this one, okay? We're going to do the walkthrough talking about the rigging options, the riggability, and how you've got this boat rigged. But along the way, I want to address some of the stuff that's out there, the questions that are out there on the internet, because I think in all of our initial videos, we angled the boat.
Right.
And it made it just look like it was so massive that it's like, what, you can't even paddle that thing. Right. And we paddled it.
Yeah.
And, oh, you're going to have a trailer. You can put this in the bed of your truck.
Absolutely.
So let's just talk about some of the stuff that's out there, but more importantly, let's walk through the features. So I'm going to get behind you and let you start and walk through the boat. Yeah. And then I'll ask questions that I've seen from the consumers out there from their initial reaction with the boat.
Sounds good.
Take it away, brother.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things I think is like, we've had a lot of concern, like you can't stand on the bow of this thing, and then obviously you put out a video where you're standing on the bow, but it is really fully capacity forward, so there's a lot of capacity up here that's going to allow you to stand on the bow.
Yeah, a lot of volume.
A lot of volume, a lot of space up here, so it is made for that, and so are both the hatch and the deck. They're built for standing. So that's one thing I think has been kind of talked about, I would say.
And you know, one thing I'd like you to touch on while we're talking about the bow mount is because one feedback that I saw that's consistently coming out is there's been a lot of guys that's like, there's no way you can put a bow mount and a battery and graphs and an angler and that thing's not going to be, you know, underwater. Right? Yeah. So talk a little bit about if you're going to do all that, maybe you put your battery in the back or something. Right. So talk about that a little bit.
As with any vessel or kayak, you do want to balance what you're putting on the boat. So that's part of it. If you're going to do most of your fishing up on the deck and you're going to have batteries, that's when you want to balance it out. So you may put a battery in the back, you may add more tackle behind you, but that's the beauty of the swivel seat is that you can do that.
Right. And then talk about the fact that it's really easy in this boat to do that because you've got your power link plate here.
Yeah, everything's...
You've got power links midship, and you've got power to come out of the back, so it'd be really easy.
So one thing that's cool about the power link plate is that it is meant to be drilled. We don't really talk about that, but it's meant to be drilled, so if you screw something up, you can replace it quickly. And for the XI3, for example, you can actually do your motor lift through the plate. So you can run your lift line through the plate. It runs through the boat, and we have a spot back here where you can bring the lift line out. So you can actually pull it up from being seated on the boat as well.
And you mentioned something I do want to touch on through the boat. Yeah. When it comes to running stuff internally, whether it's lift lines, raising and lowering lines for stern-mounted motors, electrical, this boat is, I can't think of another boat that's more set up for easily running stuff through the boat. Would you agree with that?
That's where we're headed. We've been able to incorporate a lot from the PWR and just sort of bring that riggability for less drilling, really no drilling, you know, to getting on the water. You can get your things set up, your electronics and your batteries for your motors. You can get them set up on the boat quickly.
All right, so let's talk about these decks and the features of the bow.
This is kind of cool too, that the deck is wide open, and if you know, people were asking like, what kind of waves will it take? It's a kayak vessel. It's a tiny boat.
Watercraft.
It's a watercraft. You're gonna crash a wake, right? A wake boat goes by, you're gonna crash a wake. That's why it's scuppered up here, so this thing will clear water as it goes, and you've got all this bow to handle that as you're going through the wakes. So you got a lot of waves shedding up here, but you also have like 12 scuppers running down the middle of the boat to clear water as well. So I think that's another thing that is we've kind of glossed over that, but
we've missed that in all the other talking points. So I'm glad you mentioned it. As a big dude, the one thing that I noticed immediately with this boat is there wasn't a lot of flexing at all.
Right.
So I think that is attributed to how much structure there is in the boat, all the geometry that you put in it, and then the deck is reinforced by more scuppers than I've ever seen in a fishing kayak.
Right.
So that helps it vacate water if you do happen to take water over the sides, because let's admit, you made the gunnels a little bit lower to accommodate paddling. So if you take away from the side, it's going to fill the cockpit up.
That's right.
with 12 scuppers, it's going to vacate pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So let's get into the casting decks and talk about that a little bit.
So one thing about this deck that I think is pretty cool is that not only do you have that internal storage where you can add your computer for your forward-facing sonar, but also this is all accessible so easily. So now, before on most kayaks, if you put something up here, you're not getting to it.
Right.
So you almost have to like rethink how you use this boat, because your storage is now so accessible. You can just hop up on the deck, you can sit down up on the deck and reach in here and grab whatever you want. So it's like a bass boat. And
like you said, most of the time on other fishing kayaks, if you store something on the boat, you're either not getting to it on that trip or you got to pull over on the bank and get out. This boat, you can literally just walk up to the front of the boat and access everything. And then I added track on this deck because the tracker, they're going to allow you to run a crossbar like this captain's bridge, but also you may just want to have rod holders up here. You may be doing a crappie rig or something like that, and you want to have that spider rig out here. So that's why the tracker on the deck. And then you also have additional track up here so that if you want to run monitors off to the side, you can do that too, if you want to keep it really clean. And again, you've got additional, Yakutake lock and load mounts in the front. So when it comes to configurability, you could drill into this deck if you really wanted to and put your graph up there if you're only wanting one graph, and you still have your standing deck. So yeah, it's a lot of options up here. I've only known about this boat for a couple of months. I saw it last week for the first time, and in my brain, I've already rigged it and re-rigged it 50 different ways, you know what I mean? So let's talk about this casting deck. So the other part about this deck is that it is built for standing, but also just being on hinges like this gives you so much room underneath. It is truly like having a well below the upper deck. So you've really got like the ability to just access more gear underneath it. And as far as before you close it, let's talk about that. Here's some of the things that I've seen just standing at the show for a couple hours. Like, man, it'd be nice if I could make that into a live well. Right. Well, you can. It's scuppered. It's scuppered. Hey, it'd be nice if I could put a soft-sided cooler in there. You can. Yeah. We've got a battery in here for the show, but you could literally put anything you really want to put in there. And we're not going to talk about that configuration right now, but you can also remove this casting deck and put a second seat up here and use this boat as a tandem. Absolutely. So last but not least, and then I'll shut up again, is one of the big questions right out of the gate was, man, all we see is these little dudes standing on the boat. Now, we've obviously put more content out since then. Right. And I've gotten up here and stood on the deck, and I'm a big dude, but talk a little bit about why this deck is easily standable, why it's good, like what is the capacity of it first and foremost? So I can't say like the capacity is this, but it is built just like a Yeti Cooler. Okay. So if you can stand on a Yeti Cooler, you can stand on this. So if you're using this boat, you can use the deck. If you're using this boat, you can use the deck. Perfect. And it has been designed both on the deck and underneath to handle that. Okay. So it's I guess I didn't really quite understand that. But it's like, I think people are wanting to know that if I'm using this boat as a big dude, do I have to worry about it? I just think you don't have to worry about it. No, it is fully like reinforced. It's reinforced. So cool. We've kind of put that through the paces. So talk to us about the cockpit, the steering, the seat, and then we'll move back to the tank well. And this is really cool. If you are running the bow mount motor, this space is also sort of a new area for most boats for us, because this is typically there's a fish finder here. There's a pod or a transducer, and so this is completely clear on this boat. So if you wanted to run a foot pedal to stand and steer your bow mount motor, you could do that from this location. And honestly, like standing and fishing from this boat, you don't necessarily have to be on the deck to do it. I mean, this is really the best spot for that. So there's so much room here. You can still steer with your foot braces and have lots of room for tackle to sit here, or the foot control for the bow mount. So this space is really great for a bunch of things. There's some other details. For example, we have features in here where you can add your lift lines for your motors. You can rig those through the boat. So you can really turn this into the customized cockpit that you want, that you've seen on PWRs and things like that. So there are the smaller details like that. For example, the rigging lines to the rudder or the motor, they're designed to work with our foot brace system. So
they pop out at the right spot. So this is nice and clear. It's also low here. If you see this kind of angled shape, that's low so that your paddle blade can get to the water. And so that's still important. You still need to be able to paddle it. If you need to push off from the dock, maybe you don't have your motor set up just right, maybe you need to paddle for a minute, you can still put a paddle in the water and get to where you're going. So
look,
cutting through.
One of the things that I want to really send home in this video is there's all these internet experts that talk about the fact that you can't paddle it. But I paddled it, okay? And I do know that it looks really wide in the photos and in the videos. It's not as wide as you think it is. This actually isn't even in the top 4 widest fishing kayaks on the market, but the deck was designed, since you don't have a pedal drive, your secondary form, or primary if you want it to be, propulsion is paddling it. And I paddled it and I was doing 3.2 to 3.8 knots pretty easy. Got up over 4 if I pushed it really hard by looking at the speed on my phone. But one of the things that somebody brought up that I didn't even think about, they're like, realistically, you could scoot your seat as far forward as you want to, as long as you leave yourself enough leg room if you're using the bow mount, because you don't need to steer if you're using the bow mount. So that's, again, one of those things from people that haven't even been in this boat, already figuring out different ways to trim it, different ways to outfit it, different ways to configure it. Now let's talk about the seat and and what was going on when this seat was added to the design.
I mean, this is borrowing, again, sort of, the marine seat idea. So this is a Millennium seat. It's built onto our heavy duty base. And what's great about it is not only is it fully, it can swivel, so you can put it where you need it to be on the boat, and you can fish sideways on the boat, spin around, grab some tackle. But the other thing that's really cool is that you could take this, if there's another seat that you like, you could take that off and put that on there. So there's a lot of options. You could take the whole thing off and just run a cooler in here. If you're running tandem, we'll talk about that later, but you can run 2 seats and a cooler between you. So it's just, this is a great option for, really for like accessing tackle. It's nice and high. It's one of the higher seats out there, so it's super comfortable.
It might be the highest.
Yeah, it may be. And
especially the delta between the seat height and the deck.
Based on sort of the testing that we've done, we may even want to go higher with that seat too.
Yeah, so and you totally could because of the volume.
You can, yeah.
Now, I know you're not going to toot your own horn, so I'm going to toot it for you.
All right.
One of the things that I see a lot on the internet from all of the keyboard warriors, or what we like to call clowns, is these people who've been in the sport for about 6 years, 6 months, 6 days, not 6 years. Oh, they just copied this boat or that boat. So I'm going to say this for him because he's not going to say it. This guy actually designed the first kayak ever that had these top-mounted tracks and a seat that slides back and forth in the Wilderness Systems Attack, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, over 10.
So or over 10. So for all the clowns out there, and I'm just going to call you what you are, that like to play these games of saying, oh, all they did was copy this boat. This dude right here was the originator of the top mounting seat that slides back and forth up the length of the boat. He's just now been freed up to do it in a much more versatile, scalable platform.
Yeah, and we've learned so much at this point that we've been able to do it much better. Yeah. So I guess I am copying myself.
You copied yourself.
There you go.
Now, one thing we gloss over in all of our stuff is the fact that underneath that deck you have this horizontal rod storage, and it looks like the way you got it set up, you could probably put 3 or 4 rods on each side.
Yep.
So if you're fishing around trees or bridges or things like that, you don't have to do the rod dance where you take all your rods down, put them back up, take them down, put them back up. So
I think on this boat, it makes a lot of sense to do horizontal rod storage. Typically on smaller kayaks, you're going to be, storing them vertically works really well. But on this boat, you've got this nice gunnel area to the outside of the seat. So for me, I would definitely run rod storage on one side and then leave the other side open for motor, like throttle and sonar and all that. But I like having the rod storage on this boat, and it comes with a rod cradle, but it's really also designed with these features that allow you to put the Yak Attack.
Yeah, so you could do the side stage if you wanted to.
Yeah, I would just, I'd go big on that. And that's what this is for, is to just have all the rod storage set to the outside.
Cool.
So I love this. This is really convenient. And it works great when you go to a tandem setup as well.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
So let's talk about the tank well and then the stern, kind of the business end if you're a stern-mounted motor angler.
So that this is something that we're going to be really dependent on our pro staff and the community to sort of show us how they set it up. But you, right out of the gate, you know, your motor mounting system for a stern mounted motor is right there. You're going to be able to plug wires in and run it to your foot cable. But I don't know. I think the tiller scene is going to be pretty cool too.
I think so too, and especially with the swivel seat.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? So there's a lot of capacity back here, and I think that's been a concern too. Is like, well, how's this thing going to do when you put bigger and bigger motors on it? But the capacity's there.
I think a lot of people were commenting about they should have made it longer, but I want you to address the fact that you flared the stern to give it more stability in a shorter platform, so you could still stick this in the back of your truck if you wanted to. So talk a little bit about the design of the stern and how much volume you get from the way you made the hull.
Yes, it's definitely carried the capacity to the back, and it is flared so that as the boat speeds up and you start to get the squat, it fights that, it resists that. And it was really important to me that we didn't take this boat into a longer range, because I like the idea of throwing it in a truck bed, and I think that's really key. So I've been testing this boat with a truck bed, not a super long one. If you throw this in a truck bed and you have a bed extender, that's a great way to do it. It's not that hard to get it in a boat or in a truck. So that's part of the reason that it's 12.7 and it's not 13.7 or something like that. So I like having that little bit, you know, it's not short, but it's a little bit shorter, so you can get it into a smaller truck.
Now, one thing that I want to talk about, because this is a bit of a departure from the standard Bonafide design. You know, Bonafide came to the market with the catamaran style hulls 7-8 years ago, whatever it's been, but it was kind of a deep catamaran.
Right.
And then as you've progressed through the different boat line, it's gotten progressively shallower, so that when you put the boat in the water, you're engaging the volume quicker. So talk about that. Obviously, guys, we're not going to be able to flip this boat over because it's got so much stuff on it. When we get the boat and we get it on the water, we'll do more of that. But talk a little bit about how the pontoon's a little shallower, and you're gonna get a planing effect out of this hull.
Yeah. So on the PWR, on most of the Bonafide boats, you're going to get stability built off of the way that I've designed the catamaran hull. This is a hull that's really designed as much for trailering, getting over, you know, if you hit stumps and stuff like that on the lake. This boat is designed for like just absolute capacity, mindless stability, you know. And then also, like, if you're running a truck bed or drag it up on a trailer, the bottom of the boat is smooth enough that you're not like having to fight that. And so that capacity is like super wide. When you see under the boat, there are 2 tunnels that run up and down the scuppers. Those tunnels are built onto the scuppers for structure, and those you can turn into bunks. So you can run bunks long ways, or there's enough structure running the other way that if you want to run bunks across the boat or just throw it on a trailer, you can do it that way. So because of the size of the boat and the weight, I knew that we would need to make sure that the hull was designed for getting it to and from the water.
All right, so Hans, we've already gone really long, but we did want to answer everybody's questions. So now I've got the last question for you. Actually, I got one thing. I want you to recap length, width, weight, and price, okay?
Perfect, yep. So the XTR130 is 12'7". It's 40.5 inches wide. Okay. Including the seat, it's 165 pounds. And then the price will be $27.99.
All right, now the last question, and probably the most important, the one that's raging out there on the internet is, the one thing that's raging out there on the internet is the fact that is it a boat or is it a kayak? Okay? So you're the guy that's got to answer that question, so I'm going to give you the full screen and get up here and answer this question. So is it a boat or is it what do you call it? Do you call it a boat or do you call it a kayak?
I call it both.
Okay.
You make it what you want. If you're coming from a center console, that's a kayak, right? If you're coming from a whitewater boat, that's a boat. So
okay.
I'd say this is a Rorschach test.
All right, so it's either a small boat or a big kayak, and you heard it from the man himself.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so let's, as usual, if you got any questions, light up that comment section. Hans, thanks for your time, man. I think you knocked it out of the park with this one, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, I'm Chad Hoover with Kayak Bass Fishing. If you're looking to get in on the exciting sport of kayak fishing yourself, check out kayakbassfishing.com. Yeah! Boom! Oh, yes!
What a freaking code.
So whether you want to find out more about competitive kayak fishing and kayak fishing tournaments, or just looking to learn more to make yourself a better angler, head over to kayakbassfishing.com and join today.